This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in the house. Come on in the house. Welcome home. I am so glad that you're here. You know I am. My name is Janice Pons. I am your host on this show, this podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspectives, Spiritual Truths. We talk about all things clinical from A to Z, and then we definitely look at the spiritual ramifications of it, the spiritual impact, the spiritual answer, because we are inundated. Now, look, last week, we talked about the poisoning deaths of America's children. And listen, there's a lot going on. There has been a target put on the backs of our children. Listen, I'm not being pessimistic, guys. I'm just bringing light to certain things that pastors won't even touch. Churches are full of people that have a lot of things going on and they won't go there. Listen, you have a captive audience. I want to encourage all of our spiritual leaders to be looking at some of these things and just going, you know what? We need to educate our people. We need to be talking about these things because God wants to take people from destruction to dignity. And I'm talking about our children being targeted related to their sexuality. Yes, if kindergartners are being targeted with what they can do to stimulate themselves in the public school system, that's a target. We're supposed to be focused on other things that would embolden them academically, not sexually. And then there's the addiction issue, fentanyl, edible marijuana, and then there's mental health. Mental health, we have physical health, we have emotional health, we have spiritual health, we have mental health. And guess what? Another crisis that we're dealing with, that we're going to dive into today, is the child crisis in our land. The child crisis in the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America. This is fair use. It's all out there. And you know, Janice Pons, I'm going to dive into it because immediately my thoughts get provoked. You know, and this show is all about provoking thought, bringing awareness, and pointing people towards intervention. And I know through experience as a mother, I know through experience as a licensed clinician, but this is all about education. We just talking. I want to provoke that thought. I want to shake some people up. Some people need to be shaken up to go, what are we doing with our children? Why are we just laying marijuana around? Why we're giving them access to edibles? Oh, fentanyl, that part, yeah. That depresses their little central nervous system, end up in seizures, the whole 9 yards. It's a crisis. So we have the addiction, we have the sexuality, and we have the mental health. All of that affects the mental health. All this is fair use. Let's dive in. The child crisis in our land. What is Janice going to talk about tonight? Let's go there. The state of children's mental health in the United States of America is at a level of being a crisis. Yes, it is. So much so that educators, legislators, and global organizations can't ignore it anymore. And we're going to look at why they have come to that point of going, oh, wait a minute. These children are showing up at school ravaged. Nationally, approximately 3,755,000 children have expressed that they're experiencing depression last year. Depression, we know signs and symptoms of it: sadness, can't stop crying, dismal thoughts. The key is all of us get down, but when it goes on for 2 or more weeks, we need to be paying attention. How many times have I heard Christians say, well, just plead the blood of Jesus. It's all under Jesus got it. It's all covered. Just all you got to do is pray. Yes, we need to pray. I will never minimize the power of prayer. And in addition to that, we need to be taking a closer look, and people need intervention. I'm talking about sitting down and specifically locating where they are. Where are they in their souls? Listen, there's a trend, and it got on steroids last year in 2022. We're in 2023 now. Listen to this. These are staggering numbers that I've been coming across. I said, Lord, okay. He said, you need to do a podcast. You got to do a show on that, Janice. You got to educate people, provoke thought, bring awareness, point people towards intervention. More than 16% of youth ages 12 to 17 reported experiencing major depressive episodes between 2019 and 2020. We were thrust into a tailspin in 2020 with C19. Y'all know what C19? Guess what happened? We were put on shutdown. These kids were locked down at home. All kind of dynamics were going on. People were ordering liquor into the house. They were isolated. The world was turned upside down purposefully. The rate of suicide attempts in children increased by 55% between 2019 and 2020. That's staggering. I deal with this stuff all day long. That's staggering. We've never had these kinds of numbers where the rate of suicide in children increased by 55% between 2019 and 2020. The CDC, Center for Disease Control, they did research. They keep data all the time. You go to the doctor, they keep them data. They got data on us everywhere. The CDC research found that 45% of high school students said they were consistently sad and hopeless. Those are major markers of depression, major depression, leading to a loss of desire to participate in normal activities, depression. An agency survey found that 1 in 5 considered suicide as an option, and 9% of teenagers had considered suicide within the past year. Suicide. And I'm going to say this, suicide is not a wish to die. Most times as I've dealt with so many people who had attempted suicide. 99.9% of them, I look them straight in the eye. I said, look at me in the eye. Look at me, please. We need to connect. Look in my eyes. Did you really want to die? Or were you wanting out of pain, emotional pain? They go, oh, I just wanted out of emotional pain. There are a whole lot of ways to address emotional pain. Suicide is a quick way to end suffering, and there are a lot of ways to address suffering. That's why we need to be talking. That's why we need to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention. And you got folk at church, they won't even address this issue. You need to be talking about this from your pulpit. You need to be talking about this from your pulpit. A lot of churches, they don't want to touch it. They don't want to touch the sexual thing. They don't want to touch the depression. They don't want to touch the addiction. You need to be putting this before your people to create environments where they can feel safe, and then you can point them, make relationships with places where they can go and get help. And you need to send them to skilled people so that when they start dealing with trauma, you don't get them out there in deep water and you don't know what to do. So you got to have it connected. It's a beautiful thing if you do it the right way. More than 78% of educators reported having been approached by a child at school. 78% were approached by a child at school for assistance with a mental health issue. I am so glad that they're asking. They want help. The CDC report found that hospital visits for suspected suicide attempts for girls between the ages of 12 and 17 increased 51% between February and March of 2021. Are you kidding me? Yes, that's true. In 1 month. Whoa. My clinical mind just goes tick, 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 tick. Give them to me. I want to work with those girls. I want to work with those girls. Within 1 month in 2021, girls between the ages of 12 and 17, suicide attempts where they tried to end their lives jumped 51%. I have some of the most powerful therapeutic groups that I've ever been blessed to have when it was a room full of people who had attempted suicide. It's amazing. You just got to take them there. Got to know what to do. This is why we need anointed, skilled clinicians. And yes, prayer is a part, but you got to take them down a path of dissecting their souls. And if they're dealing with complex trauma, don't you start messing with it if you don't know what you're doing. This is why we need trained, I will not back off of it. We need trained, skilled clinicians that are anointed, that know what to do, and they know how to deal with complex trauma. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to end up saying the wrong thing. Like telling somebody that they got that they're absent-minded because they can't remember something. No, they're dealing with a repressed memory. It was a coping skill. So when you say things like, "Well, you're just absent-minded," no, that's the last thing they need to hear. They just walk away. Oh God, okay. Serious stuff. Serious stuff. The average employer cost of a pediatric mental health appointment increased from $2 in 2019 for little children because it's they sad. Well, are you reading to them or just some little intervention that you used to could do? Now it's $407 in 2022. They need to be in therapy. They need to go to play therapy. They've been traumatized. They need to process it. They need to put a language to it. So that's an increase of 20,250%. These are staggering numbers that are going on in the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America. Healthcare for children with a diagnosed mental illness costs 69% more than that of those with no mental health diagnosis. We want to get our children to the point where they don't have a diagnosis, but if they have a diagnosis, it is what it is. And to be in denial, you end up lying. And things are not addressed. They're swept under the rug. And then it becomes the elephant in the living room. And we're not talking about it in churches. We need to go there in the body of Christ. Yes. We need to go there. But we've got to have a system that they're connected to where you don't get them out there in deep water and you can't close it with what they need. It's a journey. And there's a way to properly do it. Diagnosis of depression, 2 or more weeks of certain symptoms. Look it up. Anxiety, full-blown panic attacks. Woo. I remember when I would see that. God, how we going to get out of that? Back them out. He's shown me how to do that. We need to know what to do. He said, well, just pray over them. People do the most reckless thing I ever seen. I've seen just reckless stuff. Go pounce on them, laying hands on them. No, that's not what they need every time. There is a place for prayer. There is a place for the laying on of hands. I lay hands on people and they get healed. Yeah. You have to know when to do what. post-traumatic stress disorder, been traumatized, abused. This is on the increase, all of it. All of it is on the increase. We are in a crisis in our nation. It's a child crisis in our land. Where do we go? Where do we go? Listen, I'm so locked in, and I will shout the truth from the mountaintop regarding what we need to be doing. We are not paying attention to our children as we should, and we're not talking about that they are suffering. And I'm just telling you, you have a captive audience at church. We have, and so many people in church, they're being viewed as a dollar. A dollar bill is put over their head. People translate into money. God's not pleased. He is not pleased. He is not pleased. He has interacted with me about this. He is not pleased. People are dropping dead, and we're not addressing and going to the core of things and setting up partnerships with entities that can help us and partner with us in the kingdom of God to go there. What do we need to do different with our children? Listen, we got to stimulate a conversation. Let's start there. Stimulating a conversation. And it starts when they're little. Stimulating a conversation. Listen, this baby talk, stop. Yeah. Certain things I don't say, well, it would be a good idea if. Some things it's like, stop baby talk. Stop the baby. Now they're going to be, you're going to, but they need to hear the articulated sound coming from your voice. Not, well, we just sound down fast. Stop. Talk plain language to them. They're going to learn how to talk from what they hear. The sounds and gestures that babies might have, they sound like they don't make sense, but that's their only form of communication. But they're going to learn from what they hear from you. So early child development, scientists say that we should stimulate that. We're going to have them in front of us, giving them eye contact. These children that have failure to thrive, they've been left in some playpen, left in some crib, no interaction whatsoever, hearing cussing and fighting. And God knows if they become abused as infants, sexually, mentally, emotionally. God didn't create those babies to be ignored that way or to hear hollering and being slammed against the wall. I know adults that have traumatic brain injuries because they had a shaken baby syndrome. Parents should respond. Listen, we're talking about a different way. Respond to their sounds. And as they get older, you're going to keep responding to their sounds. That will be articulated language. Pay attention to these babies. There are cues and actions that they give, and we want to be hooked in with them. Listen, I know we're going 500 miles an hour. Folk got to work. But I'm telling you, being intentional to pay attention to them, to listen to their sounds and say, I hear you making that sound. What are you talking about to me? What are you saying to me? Are you trying to tell me something? Yeah, and they'll just, you know how they do. Engage with them. Look in those eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul. So you got a baby laying over there and you're not even looking at them, picking them up, thriving, holding them to you, interacting, looking at that baby, giving that baby eye contact, affirming that baby. The number, listen, this is very powerful. I'm way into this kind of stuff because I know I walked it out with my son, and I've taught other people how to do it when I was a teacher and a school psychologist. Powerful results. The number of words that a baby is exposed to is going to determine the amount of words in a child's vocabulary at the age of 2. So Janice looked silly, they thought. when I was teaching my son how to read when he was 3 weeks old. I've said that before. But when I'm always, son, baby, we turning the light on, we turning the light off. See, you see that flip, that switch right there? When I push it up, look at what happens. That's how electricity works. And he just looking. He started talking when he was 7 months old, articulated words. At 7 months old, people said, y'all crazy. He ain't talking. Yes, he did. When he turned 2, he had the vocabulary of a 5-year-old. So when I came upon this in my research, I was saying, oh, so I was Johnny on the money, talking to him, articulating language to him at that age. We need to be having these conversations. And what you're doing, you're building a relationship. See, we may have missed it along the way, but you can turn it around just like that. Interacting with those babies, looking in their eyes, take babies babbling seriously and encourage it, interact with them. But your response is going to be language, because that's how they're learning. So you read to your baby. Why? To exercise language. Exercise language. Babies might not be talking or reading, but they're born ready to learn. They are born ready to learn how to read. If you're not reading to a baby or a 1, 2, 3-year-old, you're wasting time. Read to them, discuss the pictures, read out loud to your baby, build that language skills, ask questions. Here are your questions. Who, what, when, where, how, why. Discuss it. Who, what, when, where, how, why. And guess what? When they become a teenager, they're going to tell you who, what, when, where, how, why. And you just have this beautiful communication going. You were doing it when they were babies. We're talking about how to lay a foundation about this child crisis that's going on. Use everyday experiences and seize the opportunity. Be intentional. If we're intentional with them, it becomes a learning opportunity, stimulating their minds, stimulating their emotions, building those relationships, because they're in a crisis. When these types of things are established, the chances of them becoming depressed and anxious, it diminishes. Why? They've got this amazing relationship that has been fostered, that has been established, that has been built upon. Child crisis in our land. Every life experience that a child has, that a baby has, it's all about learning. You got to, I just really want to encourage us to think like that. I saw on Facebook a lady that was twerking, putting her behind that baby was 8, 9, maybe a year, I doubt it. But just sitting there taking all that in, and she had her behind that close to the baby's face, just humping. I wanted to take her out to the shed and talk to her. I want to take her out to the shed. Let's go out here and talk, baby. Whether it's a bath time, you're explaining what we're going to do. You're sorting laundry. Let them help explaining what we're going to do. Cooking, running errands. Every moment is a learning moment. What was she teaching him? What was she teaching him? I talk about the lady that the little boy was coughing full of congestion. She was hollering at him, shut up that coughing, hollering. What was she teaching him? Making faces to actually show different emotions. This is how we look when we're happy, see? Sometimes we get sad and we look like this. But, we can think about good things and we get happy again because we're talking and we're hugging. Give me a hug. And you just explaining what's going on. You know what you're doing? You're developing an emotional intelligence. There's so many children, they're absolutely disconnected. We don't even have an emotional language. I have done therapeutic groups with men and they didn't. What do you mean? Sad. What? So we had to go back to, here are the basic emotions on this sheet. we had to go back to develop a vocabulary first, let alone processing the feelings. Listen, take play very seriously. Young children are learning all the time. When they play, they're building important life skills. I remember when I was a clinical director, program director at a substance abuse treatment program for women and their minor dependent children, we gave priority to women who were pregnant. If they were IV users and pregnant, they went to the top of the list. Come on, we're coming to pick you up. Smoking crack 8 months. Finally decided to get treatment on the 9th month before the baby was born. My kind of girl. I like working with them. So we gave 24 hours of therapy to the moms a week and 12 hours of therapy to the children a week. And so I am big into training. So I want staff to know, any program I'm going to run, they're going to know why we do this. We're not just doing stuff to pass time. So when we were having the therapeutic groups for the children, I asked them, you got to chart it. You got to cross-document it back to a treatment plan. And so she had done that. They played for 20 minutes. I said, what is this? Anybody knows me professionally, you know who I am. I said, what is this right here? She said, well, I just put down that they played. They played? No. Why did you? Okay, and I said, teach a moment. Come on, let's focus together. Why did you have them playing? She thought. I said, go ahead. She said, because I wanted them to develop appropriate and positive social developmental skills. That's the note you're going to write. That's the observable, measurable behavior that we intentionally do with these children to develop their social skills. And so we connect that, cross-document that back to a treatment plan, and we're very intentional. They're not just playing up in here. Are you kidding me? No, we're intentional. We got to go. So it's observable, it's measurable. Take play very seriously, being intentional. They didn't just play. We got to go. We're building relationships. We're teaching problem-solving skills. We're teaching cause and effect relationships. Oh boy, I could take that. I could develop a whole treatment plan on just that. If we're just learning to think a different way, learning to think a different way. Lead by example. That woman that had her behind in front of that little 1-year-old's face, this close, humping. Lead by example. They watch your attitude. Children watch your body language. They watch your actions. They watch how you respond or react. Lead by example. We're talking about our children that are in a crisis in our land. Who are they going to get it from? Who are they going to get it from? Who are they going to get it from? People hollering and cussing and smacking them upside the head. Don't ever hit a child upside the head. Did you hear what I just said? Don't you ever hit a child upside the head again. If that's what you're doing, sometimes you're inflicting a brain injury. It's real easy to do. It's real easy to get a brain injury. Establish a daily routine. We're talking about our children that are in a crisis. What are we going to do? Establish daily routines where we have meal times, homework, chores, bedtime. I'll say it again. People just, we don't need to sit down. Sitting at the, look, everybody's running, as they say, my mama go, ripping and running up and down the street. When I hear my mama say, they're just ripping and running up and down the street. I have a visual, but you had to hear my 99-year-old mama say it to really appreciate it. That looks like something. No, we're going to sit down. We're going to have a meal time. Even if we don't do it every day, we're going to have some time where we're focused at my massage therapist, Jen Buchanan, I love you. She is very intentional with her 3 boys. They have meal times. They cook. They clean. They have homework. And she said, they know I don't play. I love it. She's got it together and she's very intentional. They do chores and they go to bed at a specific time. Listen, we're in a crisis. We're in a crisis. We're in a crisis. God has a plan. We have to be intentional with our precious children because they need us to be paying attention. They don't need to be eating edible cannabis. They don't need to be picking up fentanyl. They don't need us so glued to our phone we can't even pay attention to what's going on, and they fall down and end up having a brain injury because we weren't simply paying attention. Tonight, we talked about the child crisis in our land. Let's be intentional. We want to take our children from destruction, interrupt these patterns, and we want to take them on a path of dignity because they are full of greatness and God has an amazing plan for them, and we have to be intentional to make sure that it unfolds in their lives. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
Education, affirmation, dedication.